So, Leighton, it seems you are back on our channel, and got to say to everybody watching again that we've been chatting a lot since the last video, and we've been throwing a bunch of ideas around, and we came up with this idea of doing a sort of step by step how to get to Romania and get set up in Romania, and that's the point of this video. I want to just make a point here that we're trying to give very authentic information and useful, actionable knowledge to people, not just broad opinions, actual specific bits of advice that can really help you get set up here. And so this video is going to be a step-by-step list of all the considerations from start to finish. So first consideration when you arrive in Romania is an address for a residency permit. Now, that means you need a rental contract on a property or to own a property, right? I think that's how that works. Yeah. So that's pretty straightforward. You can buy a property or rent an apartment. Renting an apartment is probably the cheapest way to do it, or you can find someone who will who can let you use their address for that purpose.
I think the key thing is you have to have the evidence of the address in writing that you're able to present at the immigration office.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Once you've got that residency address, then you can apply for a residency permit. Mm-hmm. And once you've got a residency permit, you can start. You can have a bank account. You could have shares and set up a company without the residency permit, but you still need an address for the company, which is the same issue. Normally, there's some cost involved in that. If you have to rent, you have to rent one. So it's kind of logical to use the same address for your company if you're going to have one, and the residency address. That stuff's all actually fairly straightforward, and the information about all that is generally available. When you come to actually buying a house or a piece of land or even a piece of farmland, that's when it gets a little bit more complicated, and that's the stuff I wanted to chat with you about, Leighton, more, because I thought it'd be interesting for us to exchange our experience with that. So my experience has been, if you want to buy a house or land, first of all, you're going to need a company to do that in most cases, because you can only really own an apartment on your personal name. Certainly as a Brit, I think it's different for EU citizens, but just assume that you're going to need a company. Maybe you don't because of your individual situation. But that's not your big problem. Your big problem is going to be finding a property and paying a fair price for it. The kind of experiences I've had is just enormous amount of time wasting. Properties not as described, advertised, and sort of bait and switch things. You turn up thinking it's something great, and it turns out to be nothing like it. People start trying to sell properties that aren't theirs, or get deposits on properties that aren't theirs, and on and on and on and on. So my personal opinion is, what you need to do is decide the area you want to be in first. Decide the location, plant yourself in that location somehow in the cheapest way you can that you're comfortable with, and then start getting to know the people, make some local contacts, and start looking around physically for properties. That's the way I would do it. And in the process of doing that, you'll get a real feel for the area. Because for me personally, I bought this, I moved here in 2001. So I bought the place where I am because I was quite happy being on my own, and I found a cool place, but in hindsight, I probably wouldn't have chosen this area. There's advantages and disadvantages like everything, but now I've got some roots here and I don't really want to move, you can. The weather is very nice here. There's lots of sunshine, which is a big plus for me. The north of the mountains from here, lots of clouds and not such nice weather. So, that's one example. But anyway, I'll let you. What's been your experience of looking for properties? What would be your advice? Because I'd like people to hear from you.
I think, what I talked about in the first video is the area that we're living in now was really to do with my wife knew the area. I went to school here, and that's why we came here. And touch wood, fortunately, it's a very beautiful area here. It's that great compromise, between usable land and practical land and good roads, as well as beauty. There are lands, in Romania with more fertile soil. There's more beautiful areas in terms of views and Brasov, Maramuresh, and all over the place. But for me, this is a perfect sort of combination of the two. I think one of the first things regarding properties when I came here, and we bought the house here, and a couple of others since then. But the house I'm talking to you from now is not the house I talk about in the first video. This is a second house. The house in the first video was very beautiful. But in terms of location, when I started to drive around the area, I came to this village where I am now, which was 5 kilometers away. And I just resonated better with this area. It was sort of a little bit more remote, a little bit higher, the houses more spread out. And we spent a lot of time looking around this village and a couple of others very similar to find the right house. In that time, we went through every possible good and bad thing that you can probably go through in the real estate market in Romania here. But
Could you
on
give
positive,
could you give some examples of those
yeah,
things?
it's. I mean, first thing I'll say is the process here for buying a house, once you have your resident permit and everything else in place, is incredibly simple. Compared to the UK, where you're probably taking 3 to 4 months for a house sale to go through once all the checks are done, and the buyer solicitors talking with the seller solicitors, just in letters and emails, and all the searches that need to be done. You could literally turn up at a house here, agree the sale, and the very next day, providing all the paperwork is correct, go to the notary office, do the exchange of contracts and money, and own that property within 24 hours. It is a very streamlined, straightforward process. If you want it to be, providing that all the paperwork and things are correct. Now, my experiences of the property Magda and I have looked at and been involved in when we've been over here, there are some problems we've had with paperwork. There was a property we looked at, agreed the sale on, started to get the team in to do the finalization of the paperwork and map out the borders of the area. And when he came to look at the paperwork that the lady had that was selling it, he realized she only owned 1/5 of the in-travel land. In-travel land is the land that you're able to build on. It's the non-agricultural land or woodland or pasture land. And she didn't even know who the other people that owned the property were. They're distant cousins that she's never met, didn't know which country she was, they were living in, and that sale fell through. There was another house we looked at that had been for sale for a long period of time. We agreed the price. We had the money in the car, and we were driving to the notaries to do the contract and do the exchange and buy the property. And we got a phone call half an hour before when we were in the car to say they changed their minds. They actually want a little bit more money than we had agreed. As a matter of principle, that didn't suit well with us. There was plenty of options at the time, and we pulled out of the deal. It just didn't feel right.
This was a thing in England called gazumping, wasn't it?
Gazumping. Well, yeah. Gazumping was more to do with, when somebody put an offer in that had been accepted, was trying to, somebody else that wanted to buy the property, and you just sort of running them up.
Oh, okay. Like Dutch auction.
Yeah, but going the other way rather than the Dutch going up, more like that. Where this was just, unfortunately, I mean, we're going back a little bit of time now. We're going back 7, 8 years, I think, with this particular deal. There was, at that time, more of this belief that anybody coming from England or Europe had lots of money. And just by default, being English, I had a lot of money to spend, and therefore squeezing an extra 3,000-4,000 out of me shouldn't be an issue. I shouldn't blink an eyelid, which is not always the case. It's for me, when you agree a deal, you agree the deal. Once you've shaking hands on it. That's it. It's in stone.
Okay, just because your wife is Romanian,
Yeah.
how do you think you would have fared without your wife to help you if you'd come here alone?
I think it would have been incredibly difficult, not just in terms of the language, um, but my wife is from the countryside. She understands the mentality. She's a very good, negotiator and able to build rapport, and get on with anybody that she wants to. Um, but mainly understanding the system, understanding the mentality and the language was a huge help. It would have been more expensive and more difficult for me to have done it myself at that stage with where my language skills
Mhm.
were, which were zero. They're a little bit better now, but it would have been very difficult at that time.
The I found the mentality is very, very different, and my what took me a long time to get my head around is because the mentality is so different. You can't really work out what is ridiculous nonsense and
Mhm.
what is just ridiculous nonsense to you, but quite usual for Romania. And it's not that the mentality is better or worse, because I can think
Mhm.
of plenty of people in my home country that have a very bad mentality.
Mhm.
But the point is trying to figure out what's the good information and what's not. And that took me a long time to figure out methods and strategies
Yeah.
for doing that. That's an
Yeah, I
interesting
think when,
point.
when I talk about the mentality, I'm not talking about the mentality in a negative way. Obviously, as I say, there's a little bit of being a foreigner, the expectation that you're going to pay more money. But the mentality I'm really talking about is people, especially, and I talk mainly about the countryside because that's where I am and what I'm used to, is there is an attachment with these properties. They're a family property. That's where the family have grown up over multiple generations. There's a couple of houses in the village here today, which I would love to buy. They're empty. They're in a fantastic position. They're beautiful. I'm looking at selling my house here and relocating, further up the valley and to build something new. But there's two houses I would buy
Sorry,
now.
wait a sec. Did you just say you're selling your house?
Yes, my house is
That
for sale.
one.
Yes, this
Oh,
one here.
like anybody watching, Leighton's selling his house. Sorry, you should have said that before.
Yeah, get in contact with Ed if you want
Yeah.
details.
Sorry, go on.
It's
Yeah,
it's
carry
a
on.
very beautiful house, and it's not quite some of the houses we're talking about
Yeah,
now. But the thing is that these houses have been empty for many, many years. We know the family, we've spoken to them, but they're not interested in selling.
do
They're
they
not.
say why?
Yeah, because they're the family house, and
Yes.
they're not incredibly wealthy people.
No,
I'm sure that the money from the sale of the property would be very
but
beneficial to them.
but it's part
But
of their family identity
it's
and their heritage and
exactly
everything. Yeah,
that.
yeah,
They have children.
yeah,
They're thinking maybe the children want it in the
yeah,
future,
yeah. No, I get that.
and
It's perfectly normal. I mean,
yeah,
this is
it's. But you have to, you have to understand this. You have to understand that mentality.
yeah,
Sometimes when something's for sale, it can be a very reluctant sale,
yeah,
and you have to approach it in a very sensitive,
yes,
way.
yeah.
Just because it's for
What you're
sale doesn't
saying.
mean that they're keen to sell it.
Yes,
It's
what you're saying now about personal attachment and these things being very emotional decisions and it
yeah,
being very important to speak to people tactfully. That has been exactly my experience too. Like you can
yeah,
buy things sometimes that other people can't buy, just
yeah,
because you speak to people with some respect and take an
yeah,
interest. And a
yeah.
lot of people don't get that. They here's the money. What's your problem? Which is crazy.
Yeah, exactly. You've got it for
Yeah,
sale. You
yeah,
want to sell it, or when it's for sale, but the paperwork's not right.
yes,
As in, it's not registered correctly, or there's multiple people involved generally as well.
yeah,
Because of the succession of inheritance here, if the house was originally in the grandfather's name and he passes away, the inheritance is then split to, the children equally.
hmm,
If they were then to pass away, it then gets passed on to their children equally, their share of the property, until it's sort of consolidated at some point into one person's name.
hmm.
Um, And it can be, a little bit confusing, that process, if the house hasn't been registered for a long period of time, to
Mhm.
understand that succession, and to get all of those people in the same room together to, to do the paperwork to enable the sale is difficult. And sometimes people, one of those parties will list the property for sale, as we came across, um, quite innocently, really. Um, but you're unable to do the sale because of, the way the
Yeah.
ownership is. The
Which,
other thing, of course, is that a lot of properties that are potentially for sale, and as a reluctant sale, empty properties, aren't listed on estate agent websites,
yes,
and the
of
other
course.
methods that
Yeah,
people use. You
of course.
literally have to
The best
speak to
stuff you'll
people in the
always
village.
find
Yeah,
by driving around and looking
yeah,
yourself.
yeah, yeah,
That's without a doubt. Yeah, I've had a very similar experience, which is interesting. So yeah, this comes back to my point: is you want to base yourself physically in the area you want to buy, get to know the locals, get to know the detail, the deals,
yeah,
and personally put your own time into it, because you're going to find it very hard to find anybody unless you pay them a significant amount of money that you can, one, trust, and
mhm,
two, rely on to take the thing as seriously as you're going to take it, because it's going to be your home for potentially a long time. So it's best to put yourself in the area where you want to buy and start to network with people. You could easily get a very good deal as a result of that, which will more than pay you back any cost of doing that and getting on the ground in the area where you want to buy in the first place.
yeah.
um
Absolutely. I think you've got to physically be in the area that you want to be in, like you say, network, speak to people, find out who potentially would want to sell, and you'll be very surprised, with the options that become available.
Okay, so something I'm going to share, because we briefly talked about this before the call. When I figure out how to do it, I'm going to
Get the
share.
spectacles on and the Yorkshire tea
Yeah,
ready.
this is a place that I was just driving about. It's quite near me. I'm not sure if it's still available, but it was a very interesting building. Um, I think this was built in about 1930, 1940.
Mhm.
Uh, and you'll see we're walking. So I'll let you do the commentary. Actually, you can comment because you're the building guy.
Well, everything looks original here. So we've got the original doors going through to back. This is more of a food storage area, and to the right, which would have been for the grains and things like that. The layout of these houses, as you'll see, is there's not one door. In fact, this house has got four front doors, that lead into different rooms, which aren't then connected to each other, laterally, only from the front. It is, of course, possible to change this configuration and block up a couple of the doors, and go through from the side into the different rooms. Um, every room, as you see, has got a wood burner. This one's actually in the wall between these two rooms, by the looks of it, to heat both rooms from one fireplace. The other thing you'll see when you look at these beautiful original, single pane windows, is you see the windows here. It's not double glaze; it's a secondary glazing you have on the inside.
Hmm.
It works the same as double glazing. You have an air gap between the two windows. Look at that beautiful picture in the traditional dress there. Very,
It-
very nice. Yeah, you see the windows here. So you've got single pane secondary glazing, very effective, but you don't have it on the door, which
mhm.
I never quite understand. So all the windows are quite well insulated, but the door isn't. You from my point of view, I love these windows. I think they're very very beautiful, very original. You get different standards now. You can see this house in the countryside has been built, like you say, around 1930 by somebody that's got money. There's a big difference between the different house styles
Yes.
and the money that goes into them. Those windows are very ornate, very beautiful. The Brankoven-esque style arches and layout of the house is very nice. It's very, very smart. That thing of having two houses on one plot, separated from themselves, is very
Well,
normal.
that other
The old
house,
house and the newer
um,
house.
that
the
other house
parents'
was
house and the children's house.
that other house is very old. Apparently, I
Yeah,
think
timber
la-
framed.
yeah.
Yeah, stone foundation. I could see to the left of the old house, there's the entrance to go into the basement, into the root cellar, which is where a lot of the root vegetables would have been stored, and the moonshine, the palinka.
I'm going to show you. I think I've got a video from inside the roof as well, which I'm sure you'll do a nice commentary on. I'll do more of this. I'll find more properties, and you
Yeah, I
can.
think it's very interesting to see these properties,
Yeah.
especially from other countries. They're very unique, these Eastern European and Romanian houses.
What would be also very useful, anybody watching our videos who's interested in any aspect of anything we're doing, who has expert knowledge, we really want to hear from you, because I'd gladly have other Romanians or other Westerners on here with opinions and knowledge, or just an interest. We'd like to have more people on with us on these kind of videos. So anybody who knows anything about anything we're talking about, or disagrees with anything, like a particularly like corrections and criticism, because that's how we learn. Yeah, that would be great to get in contact. You can do that in the comments. Just ask for contact details in the comments, and I'll give them to you. Right,
I
let
think
me.
sorry, Ed, with these countryside houses as well, what you've got to take into account is they were built by either a couple of guys in the village or the people that lived in the house themselves quite often. So the different standards of construction is very evident. They're very, they can be very amateurish. Just looking at this roof space here, looking at the floor, in a lot of houses you have mud on the top of the ceilings that was used as insulation between these beams, which this house doesn't have actually. But these are beautiful squared heartwood, possibly even oak timbers up here, which again is an indication of a house that wasn't a cheaply built house. This was built by professional builders at the time, as opposed to the people that lived in it themselves.
That structure looks solid to me. That looks strong
Yeah,
and solid.
yeah. I've got a wooden barn at the property here, with oak timbers. I tried to drill into one not so long ago with a wooden drill bit. I couldn't get into it. It was like it was concrete. It's so strong, this aged oak.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant material. You can see with the roof space here, how tall it is, and the potential to create an attic space or an additional room. Which a lot of people do, the masada on the top of the house.
I want to correct you and say I think that word is mansarda, but after the whole apushan thing, I daren't say any more Romanian
masada.
words. I think it's
it's called in
mansarda.
Romanian. They call it a pod, which is like a bridge. And the same word for
Don't know about
bridge,
that.
a lot of people refer to the
I
attic
think
as a pod.
I think it's mansarda, but I can't wait for everybody to pile on and correct me again, like they did with the whole
I don't think
apushan
anybody
thing.
will mention anything about our pronunciation of Romanian, Ed.
No, they did last time.
I was being sarcastic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You've
Slow
lost
this morning.
much of your English humour. I think you've been here too long, Ed. The attic space there. What you'll see in a lot of these older houses with the attic spaces is they're quite open and they're quite ventilated. You can see a lot of light coming through under the eaves of the house. A lot of people would have, and you'd have probably seen it more in the older of the two houses there. But the entrance to the attic would have been used a lot. All of the nuts, herbs, and anything that needed drying and preserving was often hung in the attic spaces to dry them out. And it was a deliberate thing to have this ventilation, coming through. I think nowadays we would take the roof off, we would insulate it properly, we would vapor barrier it, and we would make it into a moisture and air-free space. But it is down to preference. There's nothing wrong with that roof. It's been on there close to 100 years, hasn't failed, hasn't let water into the house.
It did look dry, didn't it? In there, looked very dry.
Yeah, it's dry. It's saw a little bit of rot in one of those beams there, Um, Again, that's, in my opinion, is a good quality, roof from that period. There are a lot of houses in the countryside that were built with, literally um, cut trees without being shaped at all.
Yes, I've seen that.
In a lot softer woods and a lot of pine that was very
Hmm.
lightweight, very simple to use, but
Hmm.
they tend to they rot out a lot faster. You
Yes.
get a lot of woodworm in them,
Hmm.
and then they develop dry rot. And you've got to be very careful, or very conscious of when buying these older properties, is the quality of the timbers in the roof and the foundations. They're the two places I would start, and I can talk detail with regarding two or three properties in this area that friends of mine have bought, thinking the houses are good, thinking they'll just do a nice, simple renovation. And when it's come to it, they've had to take the houses pretty much back to just four walls, dig out all the way around the foundations, put in new concrete foundations. And when they look back now, they think, you know what, it would have been easy just to have demolished the property and,
Hmm.
and, and started again.
Start again, yeah. But that place we were just
They're not
looking
all
at,
like that. You've just got to, look
that
at these things before.
um I don't know what you think, but that place we were just looking at is such a
Mhm.
beautiful building on the outside.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah,
be, that's the kind of thing you want to restore because
yeah.
it's just a beautiful thing,
Yeah,
and best
I
to
mean,
keep it like
yeah,
that.
that's a good, strong, solid
Hmm.
house. Even the wooden structured one next to it, that again, I can just see by the quality of the workmanship in the wood and the straightness of the property. Again, it's a quality wooden house. It's been built right. The older houses, I think in England we call them mud and studs. It was a timber frame, and then the insulation was with cob.
Hmm.
Mud, straw, cow manure mixed together as the insulating material on the outside and the inside, and then painted.
Hmm.
Very, very good natural materials, good insulating properties, and it gives a nice vibration. A house that's built, completely of wood and
I
natural materials.
something else I was just thinking about other people who are watching. If they want us to feature particular houses on here, we could set,
Mhm.
if they send us some video and stuff, we could do this with other people's houses, right?
Yeah,
Discuss
I
them. Yeah,
love I
yeah,
love nosing around other people's houses
yeah.
and
Okay, so
looking at houses for sale. Yeah.
yeah, so the next thing, the next point was, um, what's your experience with checking the title chain and provenance of papers and stuff like that? I'll just say what I think. My view's always been, if something is fishy, it can be very hard to spot, but you can normally see the things that don't seem at all fishy, because
Mhm.
you can figure out that someone's really owned it. You meet the people; it's quite obviously their pride and joy or something they care about that's
Yeah.
been in the family for ages. So
Yeah.
that my feeling is always, if there's very limited information and you're getting different stories from people, it doesn't all fit together, start being suspicious. If someone's clearly owned something for a very long time, they just look like they're at home in the property, and you know what I mean. It's a hard thing
Yeah.
to define.
Yeah. I think that there's two things here. There's a property which is recently registered in the last few years, and there'll be very clear, up-to-date paperwork and the chefe for the land and the house. And it's very clear, it's very straightforward. It's issued by the Premier, and it's very clear who owns the property, what the title number is, the size of the property, etc., etc. Where it gets a little bit more complicated is possibly where the house hasn't been registered for a long time, and the
Mhm.
paperwork's the older style paperwork. Um, and like anything
But
where,
but that's where you can have a result, though, because if you're prepared to stick the time and effort into that, that's where,
yeah,
and especially when the people themselves don't really understand it and don't know
yeah,
what they're doing,
yeah,
that's when you can sort of help them and say, okay, look, I'll figure all the paperwork out, but this is
yeah,
the deal, and they'll sometimes just go for a low price because you're solving all the problems.
yeah, that's it. It costs money to register the
Yeah,
property,
especially
to
if you've
have
got
a
any kind of
topograph come
dispute.
out, yeah, and measure that land. And quite often, I know with the property we brought here, which we went through the whole process. It took about three and a half years to buy because there was different family members asking, different, one wanted to sell, one didn't want to sell.
Mhm.
Then they both wanted to sell, then they didn't. Nothing was registered. We got the topograph in, did all the paperwork, got it all done at our cost before buying it. And it was a big help for them because they didn't have to invest into that with funds they didn't have at the time. And it was good from our point of view because we got everything done correctly in the way we wanted it, the way we wanted the land registered. And what I found was the topograph guys are very knowledgeable in this field. And if you show them the paperwork that exists, they'll be able to see very, very quickly if there's any issues, with it or potential problems with it.
Yes.
But if you're going to take on that responsibility, you can obviously negotiate, a better price.
Another thing we could do is actually look at a real deal at some point
Yeah,
and go through like something that's not one that we want or
yeah,
one of our customers wants, something that isn't such a peachy one, just to go through and show some example papers so people can get a feel of what these things
yeah,
look like. Okay, next point was yeah. So as a foreigner, I wouldn't try and ever negotiate a deal myself. I would always find someone I trust here who's a Romanian to do it, because like even if you're from the city here and you come to the countryside, you're
yeah.
going to get treated differently from one of the locals. So really, you want a local in your area where you're trying to buy, who's on your side, who's trustworthy, and enjoy yourself trying to find that person.
Yeah,
So
100%.
yeah.
I mean, I've been, blessed. I've got Magda, and she's taken on, that burden, always. I've just remembered what I was going to say about this previous property I was talking about, and in general, you can do a pre-contract to buying the property. So once you've established a price and agreed a price, even though the paperwork is still to be finalized and set out, you can still get a legal document confirming the price that you've agreed in writing. You're going to pay maybe a small deposit towards it, 5-10%, and a penalty that if either party was to break the contract.
Yeah, that's
That
great until
is
you're at the point where apart from when you're at the point where you haven't got all the owners agreeing, because they need to all be party to that contract.
well, that is only in those
Yeah, yeah,
circumstances.
yeah.
All the owners are agreeing, they're all signing the pre-contract, but it's just to confirm certain things. And if the information that you've been given when you've negotiated and agreed that price, as in where the boundaries of the train are change, then the liabilities on them to compensate you for the for that error. But the point being is you can get that price that you've agreed in writing, signed in a legal format.
Yes. Okay, there's a couple more points. The one of the things I was going to say, it's important to keep things private. Everything you're doing when you're trying to buy something, because people talk to each other. If you get known in the area, you're looking around for something, there's a good
Yeah,
chance people are going to start sniffing around what you're doing. And if you
yeah,
find something really, if you go around talking to everyone, I'm trying to buy a property, you could end up putting a load of work in to find a property that someone else will just pull out from under you,
hmm
because they're following what you're doing. So it's a good idea. Everybody is on a need to know basis. That's always been my strategy. Call me paranoid, but I've missed deals because someone talked to someone else, and they were following what I was doing. So yeah, that's I don't know what your experience has been with that.
I tend to agree with you that. I mean, I think discretion's very important, especially in in terms of business and buying property. Again, it comes down to that sensitivity of of it as well. If you're buying a property and you're also looking at buying some terrain next door to it, I think it's important potentially to negotiate the price of both. If these are with different sellers, for example, the house and the terrain, to agree the price at the same time. If you were to buy the house first, then I would expect the land next
Mhm.
to it would increase in
Yeah,
value.
sure.
I think discretion at that point of negotiation between the two parties, is a sensible financial move, certainly.
Okay, this is just something I wanted to run by you. My theory on the real estate agency model and why it's not very good for buyers or sellers. I just wanted to know whether you agree with this or not. So my experience has been that, first of all, it's if you go to agents, it's very hard to figure out whether the agents are working in the buyer's interest or the seller's interest. That's one thing. And obviously that should be declared and very clear. And it can be declared one way and actually be working the other way, only you don't know about that. That's one thing I've come across a lot. The other thing is, it's so complex to buy any of the interesting properties. Like, you can find stuff you can go and buy tomorrow afternoon, but you could be paying twice the price you need to pay for it because someone's gone and done all the donkey work. Whereas if you take your time and buy something, it'll take you a lot of time and running around with papers and a lot of work on the ground over many months to find something really good and buy it cheap. And then to find a buyer to give you a decent bit of profit out of it, you're going to have to wait until you've got a retail buyer who just wants to buy it, doesn't care about the price so much. They want the property because they love it, right?
Yeah.
That's the way to make money out of property. So the best way to do a property business, if you want to trade properties, is to find someone to fund the deals and make a deal with them.
Yeah.
That's what I've done. That's what I've done in the past. Just like, anybody interested in doing this, I'll go and do all that, and you put the money in, and we'll make a deal between us. Which, while I mentioned that, anybody out there who wants to do that, I think Leighton and I would be keen to collaborate, because we both got a bit. I wouldn't want to do that on my own. I don't think you would either. But between us, I think we can figure out some interesting deals. So
I think there's still the property market has increased in value here. I know in my particular area, the properties have almost doubled in value in the last 4 or 5 years, and they're still incredibly undervalued, in my opinion, to what their potential is.
So the basic idea with that is, if there's someone out there who wants to fund some property deals and make a bit of money, get in touch, and we'll at least have a decent discussion about it. Maybe come on the video with us. Cool. I think that I've covered everything that I wanted to discuss. Just a reminder at the end, if you're still watching, great for getting all the way through. You're one of the dedicated viewers, and I'd say, if you've got any criticisms or additions or any information you want to give us, please reach out and get in contact, because we're trying to keep this as authentic and useful as possible, like real actionable knowledge, not just broad advice, like really good, useful tips. Get in contact, and maybe you come on a video as well. That'd be cool. Anything else from you, Leighton?
I just think if people want to give some feedback, if they want to see us, visit different properties, different types of properties, and show what's available right now to buy in Romania, I think let us know. It's a lot of effort from our point of view, to an expense to drive out, see these things, video them. We wouldn't want to do it, just for
fun.
To be honest, I would like to do it.
It's fun, isn't it?
It would be better if we knew people actually cared and were interested in it, right?
I think it's more like can't afford to work for nothing.
Well, I think it's one of those. If they're local, I'm quite happy to go in there.
Same for me. I mean, also other Romanians out there who want to drive around and look for stuff and work out something with us, and we feature the properties on the channel like we just did. We'll get better at this as well, because I can do the presentations better than this. It's hard to mess around with all this stuff with the computer while you're trying to have a conversation, but we'll fix that. I've got someone else who's interested in doing that. But cool. Okay, and get in contact in the comments, and we'll be back soon with another video. Anything else you want to say?
Speak to Ed. No, that's it. Thanks.
All right. Good to see you again. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye for now.
Bye.